Welcome to episode 1 of WikiQuest. Today I'm reviewing the Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail was created by 3 student teachers in Minnesota to keep their students engaged in a unit on Western migration in the United States. It was written and played using a teletype. This is a device that connected to a mainframe computer via phone lines and allowed you to use the mainframe remotely. It had no screen, and output was literally printed onto paper as you used it. Students would line up to play in groups, and only one person at a time could use the teletype. Unfortunately, this version had to be deleted at the end of the school semester. Thankfully, Rawich, one of the original developers, had printed out the source code to keep for himself. He was eventually hired at the Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium and submitted the game with some updates to his boss for a potential release to the wider Minnesota school system. The game was released in 1975 to the schools of Minnesota and quickly became the most popular software in the school system. In 1985, MEC released the version most well known today on the Apple II computer. The game ran on personal computers, which meant that it was much more accessible to students and others. This version had color, advanced mechanics, and yes, dysentery. It's what became the huge icon known today, selling over 65 million copies. So what is it like to play today? I played 2 versions of the game, the 1978 version, which is the closest to the original that I could find, and the version most well known today, the 1985 version. The 1978 version is incredibly basic. You start off by allocating money to buy your oxen team, food, ammo, clothing, and miscellaneous supplies. The basic gameplay loop is to hunt, continue riding, or to go to a fort for supplies. Occasionally, you will run into riders that can be hostile or friendly. You can choose to attack them first, or continue riding, taking the risk that they will attack you. On the right, here is basically an entire flowchart for every single turn you will take. The gameplay itself is stupidly easy. As a modern gamer, I quickly understood the best strategy to take as I played. I found that buying ammo and hunting for my food was a lot more cost effective than buying my food. Since the hunting was always just typing a 3 or 4 letter word quickly, I could almost always get the shot off in time to get the most food from each hunt. Unfortunately, I didn't really learn much about the actual Oregon Trail by playing this version. Since this version is so basic, the gameplay doesn't really teach you much about the trail itself, except perhaps the hardships the travelers faced. This could easily be anywhere else in the world with some changes to events and probabilities. Even just a few real landmarks along the trail would have made this a much more interesting learning tool. So that's why they made an updated version of the game in 1985. This version is considerably more interesting. If I was a kid getting ready to start a unit on westward migration in the United States, playing the Oregon Trail would have made me much more interested in the class itself. Even just the simple addition of landmarks was very interesting to me. Talking to people at the landmarks made the trail feel alive. You gain an insight into the lives of some of the people on the trail. Some of them talk about their health, others talk about their fear of Indians. Often the conversations reference real-life events, and I actually looked into the events to learn more about them. But how is the gameplay today? There are real stakes that you have to consider. The hunting game was much more difficult in this version. You can only carry a maximum of 100 pounds of meat per hunt, and you go through food pretty quickly. This means you actually need to occasionally buy food rather than purely hunt for food. For me, using the novice hunter controls was the more intuitive choice, even though it was a little slower. Trying to place your fingers on the right keys for the expert hunting was pretty difficult. You do have to take calculated risks. There are many points in the game where you can choose to take a shortcut, skipping a fort, or choosing to ford a river rather than paying for a ferry. Sometimes the risk pays off and you can save on money, time, or resources. Other times you lose an ox or some clothes. You have to ask yourself, should I rest and use up more food and time to help my family recover from illness, or push through and hope you get to the next fort in time? Unfortunately, not everything is under your control. Just a few hundred miles from Oregon, my wife and child died unexpectedly. There really was no indication that they were close to death, so it was just a random event that killed them. However, my arrival to Oregon without them did feel hollow. Overall, the game was actually pretty cool. I became interested in the real trail in my one playthrough. The flavor text was interesting and each landmark was really cool to look up and see the real life versions of them. The gameplay is basic, but if I played it back in the 80s, I think it would have been one of the better games I could play. Next time on WikiQuest, I'm going to be playing and reviewing Pong.